So, the question that a lot of people have is, the church started out all Jews, Jewish scriptures, Jewish God, the whole thing was Jewish. By the way, there also was a lot of power. Miracles happened. I mean, some Jewish people would walk around, and under their shadow, people would be healed. Everyone was excited about Jesus. One day, a Jewish fisherman gives a few sentences, and 3,000 Jewish people come to believe in Jesus. So how did it become so anemic today? My guest, Robert Haidler, is a specialist in this area. He's a graduate of Dallas School of Theology. Robert, how did you first get interested in this whole deal of the Jewish history of the church, or this manuscript, this unpublished manuscript I have here called The Messianic Church?
Well, I've long been interested in history. I was a student of church history in seminary. But in 1997, I was asked to teach a course in church history from a Messianic Jewish perspective. And so I began to do research and I began to study. And the first question I had was, when did the church stop being Jewish? And like many Christians, I had assumed that shortly after Pentecost, they decided, well, this is no longer Jewish, we're going to have a Gentile church, and set it up to minister to Gentiles. And so I went back to the book of Acts and began to study through to find where the break from Judaism came. And what I was amazed with as I read through the book of Acts was that break never came. There never came a point where they said, now we're leaving Judaism and we're going to become a Gentile movement. As a matter of fact, as you go through the book of Acts, they still worshipped in the temple and in the synagogues. They still took Nazirite vows. They still celebrated the holidays of the Old Testament scriptures. Even at the very end of the book of Acts, Paul is saying, I am a Jew.
So, did it happen, you think, in the first century?
Well, that was my next thing to study.
I mean, after the New Covenant was finished, was the break, or?
Because I thought, if the apostles never divorced the church from Judaism, where did it happen?
Yeah.
And you study through the 2nd century, through the 3rd century, you see the church, for the most part, still celebrating Shabbats and holidays and being very Jewish. And it wasn't really until you get to the 4th century under the Roman Emperor Constantine when he made the church an offer it should have refused. Because basically he said, if you will let me change the church, I will stop the persecution. And so the church, because of the persecution they had been under, they agreed and they compromised.
Well, what changes did he make?
Well, as a Roman, he hated the Jews. He viewed the Jewish people as a rebellious people that had been conquered by Rome. And so basically, he came out and said it. We want to remove everything Jewish from Christianity.
So you're saying to me that God didn't remove it, the scriptures didn't remove it, but a man removed it.
A man removed it, a pagan Roman emperor. He wanted to unify his empire, and he felt the best way to do that would be to take Christianity and make it a little bit more pagan, so all of the religions of the empire could merge together and be happy together.
It was a very political thing. It's like what they do today.
Yeah.
Well, what effect did this have? Okay, so they got rid of all the biblical festivals. They got rid of the Shabbat, the Sabbath. What else did they get rid of?
It really got rid of a whole biblical mindset, because the Christianity of the early church was based on the scriptures, Old and New Testament. It had a biblical attitude toward God, a biblical attitude toward the home, a biblical attitude toward the scriptures. You know, it's interesting, in the early church, their attitude toward the scriptures was every believer needs to understand the scriptures, just like the Jewish people.
Well, look at how it changed over the centuries. In the Catholic Church, it was done in a language they didn't understand.
Yeah.
I can tell you from Judaism, from my viewpoint, it is from this generation, I would go to the Orthodox synagogue and it would be in Hebrew and I wouldn't understand a word of what they were saying. So what about this whole separation of clergy and laymen?
Well, see, in the Greek mindset, Greek religions were mystery religions, which meant that the leaders, the priests, were initiated and they were able to understand the sacred mysteries, and the common people worshiped in ignorance. They weren't allowed to read the sacred books. And so when that mindset came over into Christianity, instead of having people taught the scriptures and expected to understand them, you had the priests who knew the scriptures. The Bibles were written in a language the people didn't know. They were chained to a pulpit where they couldn't be read. And the people would come in and worship in ignorance.
Now,